Deep within the shadows of Aokigahara, the infamous suicide forest that clings to the base of Mount Fuji, lies a secret older than the pine-covered cliffs themselves. Long before the forest earned its grim reputation, travelers speaking in hushed tones whispered of a stone circle, half buried beneath moss and fallen needles, its purpose erased from any written record. What ancient rites once pulsed at this forgotten altar, and why did the very earth seem to swallow its memory? The first mention of the circle emerged in a 19th century diary of a wandering monk named Kohei, who described stumbling upon a perfect ring of weathered stones, each bearing strange, weather-etched markings that glowed faintly in the moonlight. He noted that the stones formed a perfect 12-pointed star when viewed from above, an alignment that matched the winter solstice sunrise exactly. Yet, as quickly as he recorded his observations, the monk vanished, leaving only a torn page and a lingering chill in the temple archives. Archaeologists who have dared to penetrate the forest's oppressive silence report an unsettling stillness surrounding the site. The stones are composed of a basalt not native to the surrounding volcanic soil, suggesting they were transported over great distances, perhaps from the distant islands of the Ryukyu chain. Intricate petroglyphs, spirals, intersecting lines, and depictions of a creature resembling a winged serpent cover the surfaces, reminiscent of shamanic symbols found in the Jomon period, yet far more precise in their geometry. Geological surveys reveal a subtle magnetic anomaly directly under the circle's center, a phenomenon that some scientists attribute to a natural iron ore deposit, while others argue it could be the lingering echo of a ritual fire that once burned with an intensity capable of altering the Earth's magnetic field. Local folklore speaks of the night the forest sang, a tale of a low, humming vibration that rose from the stones on certain moonless nights, driving animals away and causing a faint, otherworldly glow to flicker among the trees. What purpose could such a monument serve? One theory, voiced by cultural anthropologists, proposes that the circle was a gateway for seasonal rites, a place where the living communed with ancestral spirits to ensure a bountiful harvest. Another, more unsettling hypothesis suggests it was a binding ground, a location where a community sealed away a malevolent entity, using the stones as a lattice to contain its power. The winged serpent carvings could represent that very entity, its wings spread across the heavens, awaiting release. Even today, those who venture close report an inexplicable sense of dread, as if the forest itself is protecting the circle's secret. The air grows colder, and the wind carries a faint scent of incense, despite there being no source. The stones remain unmarked by time, their surfaces eerily smooth where centuries of erosion should have taken their toll. The forgotten stone circle beneath Aokigahara stands as a silent testament to a civilization that vanished from history, leaving only cryptic stone and lingering questions. What ancient rituals were silenced there? Did the forest grow to guard a forgotten pact, or to hide a horror too terrible for words? The answers remain buried beneath layers of pine, fog, and fear, waiting for a mind brave enough to listen to the stone's mute chorus. The forest floor was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves, when a team of archaeologists from the University of Tübingen made a discovery that would send ripples through the scholarly world. Deep beneath the loam of a remote valley in the Carpathians, tangled within the twisted roots of an ancient oak, they uncovered a bronze figure, its surface darkened by centuries of soil yet unmistakably human-like. The idol, roughly 10 centimeters tall, bears a solemn, mask-like face, elongated eyes, and a series of enigmatic ridges along its torso that hint at a forgotten symbolism. No inscriptions, no clear markers of a known culture, just raw, unsettling craftsmanship that defies easy classification. Who could have carved such an object, and why did it end up buried in a tree's embrace? Some scholars argue that the statue belongs to the late Bronze Age, roughly 200 BCE, a period marked by the spread of metallurgical knowledge across the Eurasian steppe. Others point to its stylized features, reminiscent of the so-called golden men of the Danubian cultures, suggesting a ritualistic origin. The prevailing theory is that the idol was a talisman, perhaps a guardian spirit placed within the roots to protect a settlement that once stood nearby, now long erased by erosion and time. Yet the mystery deepens when we consider the metal composition. Trace analysis reveals a curious mix of copper, tin, and a small percentage of arsenic, a combination rarely seen in contemporaneous artifacts from this region. This alloy hints at a sophisticated knowledge of metallurgy that may have been shared across distant tribes, or perhaps indicates the work of itinerant metalworkers who moved with the shifting borders of the Bronze Age world. The figure's posture, one arm bent as if holding an invisible object, adds another layer of speculation. Some interpret it as a depiction of a shaman holding a ceremonial vessel, others see it as a symbolic gesture, a silent prayer directed toward the earth itself. Local folklore, recorded in 19th-century ethnographic accounts, tells of the stone man who watches over the forest, protecting travelers from misfortune. While the legend likely post-dates the idol, its persistence suggests that the memory of a protective figure once rooted in the community's psyche survived long after the original wooden shrine decayed. Could the bronze idol be the material echo of that very myth, an attempt by ancient people to give permanence to a spiritual guardian? Even the placement within the tree's roots raises questions. In many Bronze Age cultures, the act of inserting objects into living wood was believed to bind the spirit of the tree to the object, creating a conduit between the human and natural worlds. This practice is documented in the Alpine regions, where wooden poles were pierced with metal amulets to ward off malevolent forces. The oak, a tree long associated with strength and endurance, would have been an ideal vessel for such a purpose. The unanswered questions linger like mist over the valley. Was the idol a solitary offering, a solitary prayer whispered to the forest's heart? Was it part of a larger cache, perhaps hidden elsewhere, now lost to the inexorable march of time? Or did it belong to a now vanished community, its customs and beliefs forever sealed beneath the roots? As scientists continue to analyze the alloy, the surrounding soil, and the nearby settlement patterns, the bronze figure remains a silent sentinel, an enigma that invites us to look deeper into the shadows of our past, where the line between myth and reality blurs, leaving us with more questions than answers. Deep in the windswept valleys of the Sahara, where dunes rise like frozen waves and the night sky burns with a cold, indifferent fire, archaeologists have uncovered a cluster of stone slabs that seem to whisper from a forgotten age. The slabs, weathered by centuries of sand and sun, are etched with a maze of glyphs so intricate, so alien, that even the most seasoned epigraphers struggle to decipher them. At first glance, they appear to be nothing more than random scratches, yet a closer look reveals patterns, repeating curves, spirals that intersect at precise angles, and clusters of punctuated dots that hint at a structured system. Could these markings be the remnants of a lost language, a script that predates known writing by millennia? The mystery deepens when the stones are compared to other prehistoric sites. In the nearby ruins of Tadrar Kakis, petroglyphs depict hunting scenes and celestial symbols, but none share the same angular geometry as the newly discovered glyphs. Some researchers suggest a link to the enigmatic Tifinagh script of the Berber peoples, yet the glyphs diverge dramatically in both form and density. One theory proposes that the carvings belong to a previously unknown culture that once thrived in the Sahara before the desert swallowed their settlements. Another, more speculative idea points to a ritualistic purpose, perhaps a calendrical record or a map of subterranean water sources, encoded in a code that only its creators could read. What truly unsettles scholars is the sheer precision of the incisions. The lines are cut with a tool that leaves clean, uniform grooves, implying a level of craftsmanship far beyond what we would expect from nomadic groups of the era. Yet no metal artifacts have ever been found in the surrounding layers, and carbon dating of organic material embedded in the stone's crevices yields a range spanning from the late Neolithic to the early Bronze Age, a span of thousands of years, too broad to pinpoint a single civilization. As the sun sets over the dunes, casting long shadows that seem to animate the glyphs, the question hangs in the hot desert air. Were these stones a forgotten alphabet, a silent message left by a people erased by time, or merely ornamental marks that we, with our modern hunger for meaning, have elevated to myth? The answer remains hidden, waiting for a mind that can untangle the silent script etched into stone, and perhaps, in doing so, rewrite a chapter of human history that has long been buried beneath the sand. What if a single shade of crimson could turn an ordinary cliff into a warning sign, a living omen that has baffled scientists and locals for centuries? High in the mist-shrouded valleys of the Carpathian foothills, where the wind whispers through ancient pines and the ground is carpeted with a perpetual layer of damp moss, there are patches of stone that wear a vivid, blood-red veil. This is no ordinary lichen or rust-stained rock. It is a peculiar species of moss, Cyanocladus ruber that thrives exclusively on a handful of silicate outcrops, refusing to colonize any surrounding surface. The first recorded observations date back to the late 19th century journals of Austrian naturalist Franz Kessler, who noted that the crimson growth appeared only after heavy thunderstorms, spreading like a slow, deliberate spill of ink across the granite. Modern researchers have confirmed that the moss contains a high concentration of the pigment phycoerythrin, giving it that deep scarlet hue, yet its biochemistry remains a puzzle. The pigment is normally found in marine algae, not in terrestrial bryophytes, and its synthesis seems to require a rare combination of iron-rich runoff, microclimatic temperature fluctuations, and an unidentified symbiotic fungus that only emerges in the micro cracks of these specific rocks. Local folklore adds another layer of dread. Shepherds who wander too close to the red-tinged stones speak of an oppressive silence that descends, as if the very air is holding its breath. In the old village of Valsia, elders tell a story of a vanished mining settlement that disappeared overnight, leaving behind only the crimson moss as a marker. Some claim the moss is a natural alarm, a biological barometer that signals the imminent release of subterranean gases, dangerous methane pockets that have been known to cause sudden landslides in the region. Geologists, however, propose a different theory. The rocks that host the moss are rich in manganese and trace amounts of arsenic, elements that can leach into the surrounding soil after seismic tremors. When these minerals combine with the moss's unique enzymes, they produce the scarlet pigment. This would mean the moss is not a warning, but a consequence, a living record of the Earth's restless movements. Yet no single explanation satisfies all the evidence. The moss appears only on a few isolated outcrops, sometimes dozens of kilometers apart, and its growth rate accelerates in the weeks following an earthquake, only to halt abruptly when the tremor's aftershocks cease. Satellite imaging has captured these crimson islands as fleeting, glowing fingerprints on the landscape, vanishing and reappearing like a pulse of the planet itself. So the question lingers: is the blood-red moss a silent sentinel, warning us of the hidden forces that stir beneath the surface, or merely a byproduct of a rare geological dance? The answer remains hidden among the tangled roots and stone, waiting for a mind brave enough to decipher its crimson code. The wind that sighs through the jagged cliffs of the Dinaric Alps carries more than the scent of pine and stone. It bears a melody that has haunted scholars for centuries. Deep in the limestone valleys of Bosnia, near the abandoned settlement of Gornji Stitter, archaeologists uncovered a cluster of stone circles, petroglyphs, and dozens of bone flutes dated to roughly 800 years ago. The carvings depict elongated figures with arms raised toward the sky, their mouths open as if chanting. Yet no written record survives, and the people who built these circles vanished long before the first known civilization left a trace. Local folklore, passed down by shepherds who still graze their flocks on the same slopes, tells of the Kraljevic, a tribe that could command the wind with their voices. According to one oral tradition, the Kraljevic sang a perpetual hymn at the edge of the canyon, a song meant to keep the mountains awake and protect the valley from an ancient darkness. One storm-riven night, the chant stopped, and the tribe disappeared without a trace, leaving only the stone circles and a handful of delicate flutes, each with 6 finger holes and a broken, iridescent reed still lodged inside. When researchers replay the surviving flutes using reconstructed reeds, the notes rise in a haunting, microtonal scale that seems to resonate with the natural echo of the canyon walls. Some scientists suggest the frequencies could have been used for a form of acoustic mapping, guiding hunters across the misty terrain. Others, more speculative, argue that the tones were a form of early sonic ritual, intended to synchronize the tribe's heartbeat with the pulse of the earth itself. What makes the mystery even more unsettling is the phenomenon reported by modern hikers. On clear evenings, when the wind brushes the stone circles, a faint, wordless chant drifts down the gorge, a resonance that aligns perfectly with the pitch of the ancient flutes. No recording device has ever captured it. It appears only to those who pause and listen. Is it a natural acoustic anomaly, a trick of the wind, or the lingering echo of a vanished people whose songs still linger in the air they once commanded? The answer remains out of reach, and as the wind continues to howl through the empty circles, one cannot help but wonder whether the Kraljevic's hymn has simply been waiting, patient as stone, for a new set of ears to hear it once again. Deep in the mist-shrouded valleys of the Carpathian foothills, a lone hiker named Alina stumbled upon something that should have remained hidden for centuries. The trail she followed had long been abandoned, its stone steps swallowed by tangled bracken and the slow creep of moss. As she squeezed through a narrow gorge, a faint draft brushed her cheek, carrying with it a metallic tang that seemed out of place among the pine-laden air. Her flashlight fell on an incongruous slab of basalt, half buried beneath centuries of fallen leaves. She brushed the debris away, and the stone slid aside with a reluctant groan, revealing a dark maw that yawned into the earth. What lay beyond was not a simple cave, but a meticulously carved chamber, its walls lined with smooth, hand-finished limestone blocks that glowed faintly in the beam of her lamp. The floor was a mosaic of ochre and charcoal, forming a pattern that resembled a spiraling sun, an emblem found on Bronze Age artifacts across the region, yet never before seen in such an architectural context. In the center of the room stood a stone altar, its surface etched with a series of symbols that matched none of the known alphabets of the ancient Dacians, the Thracians, or even the later Slavic settlers. Archaeologists who arrived weeks later documented a puzzling array of objects. A set of bronze tools that predate the Iron Age by several hundred years, a collection of tiny ceramic shards painted with a pigment containing copper that should have been impossible to produce without sophisticated smelting techniques, and most chillingly, a series of human remains bound in a fetal position, their eyes still open, as if frozen in terror. Radiocarbon dating placed the chamber's construction somewhere between 2,500 and 1,800 BCE, a period when the surrounding hills were thought to be inhabited only by nomadic hunter-gatherers. Why would such an advanced, possibly ritualistic space be deliberately sealed and forgotten? Some scholars suggest it was a sanctuary built by a lost culture that predated the known Bronze Age societies, hidden to protect sacred knowledge from invading tribes. Others propose a catastrophic event, perhaps a massive landslide triggered by an ancient earthquake, forced the builders to entomb the chamber, sealing it in haste. A third theory, whispered among local folklore, speaks of a gate to the underworld that the ancients deliberately closed to keep whatever dwelled within from emerging. The truth remains buried beneath those limestone walls, waiting for the next curious soul to pry it open. As the wind howls through the gorge tonight, one cannot help but wonder. What secrets did those ancient hands hope to keep hidden for millennia, and what unseen eyes might still be watching from the darkness below? What if the stones themselves were a sky watcher, an ancient astronomer who captured a moment the world has since forgotten? Deep in the mist-shrouded hills of the British Isles lies a weather-worn circle of monoliths, its granite ribs standing like silent sentinels against the relentless wind. At first glance, it appears no different from the countless henges that dot the landscape, but a careful eye discovers something far more unsettling. Etched into the interface of each stone is a pattern of dots and lines that, when plotted together, forms a map of the heavens. The carvings are not random scratches. They trace constellations with a precision that rivals the most meticulous medieval star charts. Scholars who have studied the site note that the arrangement matches the night sky as it would have looked over 5,000 years ago, but with a twist. One cluster of points does not correspond to any known star at that epoch. Instead, the anomalous group aligns perfectly with a bright point that only appears in the sky every 472 years, a celestial event recorded in no surviving myth. One theory, put forward by archaeoastronomer Dr. Lorna Whitfield, suggests that the builders were tracking a rare conjunction of the star Sirius, the planet Venus, and a bright comet that, according to some ancient Chinese records, blazed across the heavens in 2800 BCE. If the circle's engravings truly mark that fleeting alignment, the monument would be a time capsule, preserving a snapshot of a sky no living soul has ever witnessed. Yet another, more speculative, interpretation comes from a fringe group of researchers who argue that the strange cluster could be a depiction of a yet unidentified object, a rogue planet or a wandering star, passing near the solar system. They point out that the stone's orientation changes by exactly 13 degrees each year, a subtle drift that would keep the map calibrated to the moving heavens. If this is correct, the circle is not merely a calendar but a dynamic instrument, a prehistoric, planetary detector, that recorded an event our modern telescopes can only hypothesize about. The mystery deepens when you consider the surrounding landscape. At the circle's western edge lies a shallow depression, a natural basin that fills with water after the first rain of autumn. When the basin reaches a critical depth, the water reflects the sky with uncanny clarity, turning the stones into a massive mirror of the cosmos. On certain nights, most notably during the rare celestial alignment, observers have reported seeing the reflected stars flicker in synchrony with the carvings, as if the stone itself were breathing with the universe. No written records accompany the site, and the surrounding villages speak of it only in hushed tones, calling it the Whispering Circle. Local folklore tells of a night when the ground trembled and a brilliant light shot across the horizon, vanishing as quickly as it arrived. The elders say the stones remember that night, that they hold the memory of a sky that once burned brighter than any we have known. Whether the engravings are a sophisticated calendar, a commemoration of a once-in-millennia celestial event, or a cryptic record of an unknown wandering star, the circle remains a silent puzzle. Its stones watch the night, their stone-carved constellations waiting for the next rare alignment that might finally reveal what the ancients saw, and why they felt compelled to carve the heavens onto cold granite, forever binding earth and sky in a mystery that still haunts the night. The night air over the remote plateau is thick with an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind that seems to stir something ancient beneath the soil. For decades, explorers and scientists have been drawn to the stone circle at the heart of the region, not because of its size or the carvings that line its weathered monoliths, but because the very ground around it behaves like a living pulse, a strange magnetic heartbeat that no ordinary compass can tame. When the first survey team set foot on the perimeter in the early 1970s, their instruments spun wildly, pointing north one moment and then veering toward the horizon the next, as if the Earth itself were trying to hide a secret. Measurements taken over the years reveal a magnetic field intensity up to 5 times stronger than the surrounding terrain, a concentric anomaly that stretches for nearly 2 kilometers in all directions. The anomaly is not uniform. It fluctuates with the lunar cycle, growing sharper during the new moon and fading as the moon waxes. Some researchers have mapped the distortion and found that it aligns precisely with the orientation of the stone circle, which faces the exact point where the sun rises on the summer solstice. One theory suggests that a massive deposit of magnetite, buried deep beneath the stones, could be responsible, its iron particles aligning over millennia to create a colossal natural magnet. Yet the composition of the soil, when examined, contains no such concentrations, and the magnetometer readings remain inexplicably strong even after the top layers have been stripped away. Another, more unsettling hypothesis points to an unknown source of energy, a relic of a forgotten civilization that may have harnessed the planet's own magnetic field for purposes we cannot fathom. Legends from the local tribes speak of a heart of the sky, a luminous stone that once pulsed with power, protecting the land from unseen forces. The elders claim that when the stone was taken centuries ago, the Earth began to react, its magnetic shield trembling in protest. Even the wildlife seems to sense the disturbance. Herds of wild goats avoid the area, and migratory birds alter their routes, as if an invisible wall repels them. Instruments placed deep underground have recorded faint, low-frequency hums that sync with the anomaly's peaks, a sound that some describe as a low, mournful chant echoing from the planet's core. No one has been able to explain why the magnetic field intensifies precisely at the solstice, nor why it diminishes during the eclipse. The data remains stubbornly stubborn, refusing to fit into any known geological model. As researchers continue to probe, the question hangs in the cold air. Is the Earth trying to conceal something ancient and powerful, or have we simply stumbled upon a natural phenomenon beyond our current understanding? The answer, like the magnetic pull itself, remains out of reach, drawing us ever closer, yet keeping its true nature forever just beyond our grasp. The night was thick with mist when the first travelers arrived at the Circle of Standing Stones on the remote moor of Caerwyn, a place that locals have whispered about for centuries. They said the stones were older than the hills themselves, hewn from the earth before memory could name them, and that something unseen prowled the perimeter, a creature spoken of only in half-remembered lullabies, the Shadow Beast. What was this beast? Was it a guardian forged from myth, a predator of the darkness, or simply the echo of human fear given flesh? Ancient chronicles from the 9th century monk Aelric describe a dark shape, longer than a wolf, with eyes like twin coals that never blinked. He recounts a night when a band of cattle herders vanished without a trace, leaving only a single, charred hoofprint beside the stones. The hoof was unlike any known animal, its ridge pattern more reminiscent of a raptor's talon than a mammal's foot. No one could explain the scorch marks that radiated from the print, as if the very air had been seared by an unseen heat. Archaeologists who have examined the site note a pattern of broken offerings: bronze pendants, bone amulets, and even a polished obsidian mirror, all smashed in the same precise radial fashion. The shards are arranged in a circle that mirrors the stone layout, suggesting a ritualistic act, perhaps an attempt to appease whatever watches from the shadows. Yet every time a new artifact is uncovered, it is found shattered, its edges jagged as if struck by an invisible claw. Modern researchers have turned to folklore studies for clues. One theory, proposed by ethnographer Dr. Leora Mendel, argues that the shadow beast is a personification of the moor's natural hazards: sudden fog, treacherous bogs, and the predatory birds that nest among the stones. In this view, the beast is not a creature at all but a narrative device, a warning encoded in myth to keep wanderers away from a place where the ground can give way without warning. Another, more speculative hypothesis points to a large, undocumented carnivore, perhaps a relic of the extinct Irish elk or a surviving population of the now extinct European cave lion, whose nocturnal habits left only faint, eerie footprints and the memory of a terrifying silhouette. The mystery deepens when we consider the oral histories of the surrounding villages. Elders speak of a black wind that sweeps across the stones at midnight, carrying with it a low, mournful howl that seems to rise from the earth itself. Some swear they have seen a pair of glowing eyes reflected in the moonlit stone, vanishing the instant a torch is raised. No camera has ever captured the phenomenon, and every attempt to set up motion-sensitive equipment has been thwarted by inexplicable power failures and corrupted footage. So, what truly guards the stones of Caerwyn? Is it a lingering spirit of an ancient deity, a surviving apex predator, or simply the collective dread of those who dared to trespass? The answer remains buried beneath the mist, waiting for the next brave soul to step into the circle and listen to the night's silent, unanswerable question. The night was bitterly cold on the remote plateau of the Pamir Mountains when the Soviet-Mongolian Joint Expedition set out in early September 1979, hoping to unlock the secrets of a series of strange stone formations that local herders called the Whispering Stones. The rocks, half buried in permafrost, bore shallow grooves and concentric circles that no geologist could explain. Some claimed they resonated with a low hum whenever the wind passed through the narrow valleys, a sound that seemed almost intentional, as if the stones were speaking in a language older than man. The team, led by geophysicist Dr. Anatoly Kirov, consisted of 5 specialists: a cartographer, a linguist, a glaciologist, a photographer, and Kirov himself. Their equipment was modest: paper maps, a portable radio, and a set of hand-drilled cores, but their curiosity was boundless. Within days, they uncovered a shallow cave beneath the largest monolith, its entrance sealed by a thick slab of compacted ice. When they broke the barrier, they found a narrow chamber lit by an eerie phosphorescent moss that clung to the walls, casting a ghostly green glow. Inside lay a collection of artifacts that defied chronology: a bronze spearhead fashioned in a style reminiscent of the Bronze Age, a set of polished obsidian discs that matched no known cultural typology, and a series of petroglyphs etched into the stone floor. The carvings depicted humanoid figures with elongated limbs, standing beneath a sun that bore 6 rays, an image never seen in any known Eurasian tradition. The linguist, Dr. Marina Vassilieva, noted that the symbols bore a faint resemblance to the enigmatic script of the Indus Valley, yet they were arranged in a pattern that suggested a calendar of some kind. As the sun sank behind the jagged peaks, the team set up camp inside the cave, oblivious to the growing storm outside. The wind howled through the narrow fissures, and the moss began to pulse rhythmically, as if reacting to an unseen force. At midnight, a low vibration reverberated through the stone floor, growing louder until it felt like the earth itself was breathing. The researchers gathered around a central stone altar, where a shallow depression held a dark, tar-like substance that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Suddenly, the temperature plunged, and a blinding flash erupted from the altar, illuminating the entire chamber for a brief, searing moment. When the light faded, the tar had vanished, the moss lay dead, and an uncanny silence settled over the cave. The researchers scrambled to their equipment, but their radios emitted only static, and the compass needles spun wildly. Hours later, when rescue teams finally forced their way through the snow-blocked pass, the camp was empty. The tent was torn, the fire long cold, and the cave entrance sealed once more by a fresh slab of ice that had formed overnight. No bodies were ever recovered, and the artifacts remained locked inside, untouched by human hands. Some speculate that the team stumbled upon a dormant energy source, perhaps a natural electromagnetic anomaly that erased their existence from the physical world. Others whisper that the Whispering Stones are a relic of a forgotten civilization that possessed knowledge of dimensional thresholds, gateways that open only under precise celestial alignments. The exact nature of what they found, and why the mountain chose to silence them, remains a haunting mystery, echoing across the winds of the Pamirs, waiting for the next brave soul to ask the same question. What lies beneath the stones, and why does it not wish to be found? What could a camera suspended in the sky discover that has eluded explorers for centuries? The footage, captured just weeks ago by a modest quadcopter, shows something far more unsettling than a simple foot trail. High above the mist-shrouded cliffs of the Carpathian foothills, the drone's lens catches a narrow, almost imperceptible line cutting through tangled brambles and moss-laden stone, a path that does not appear on any modern map, nor on the hand-drawn charts of 19th-century cartographers who painstakingly surveyed these lands. At first the line looks like a faint scar left by a forgotten herd, but as the aircraft glides closer, the earth beneath the trail is unnaturally smooth, as if polished by countless footsteps. The surrounding vegetation bends away, creating a corridor of dead, brown grass that seems to resist the wind itself. The deeper the drone ventures, the more the terrain changes. Jagged limestone arches give way to a vaulted chamber choked with a low, resonant hum that the microphone picks up, an acoustic echo that resembles distant chanting, though no source can be seen. Local folklore speaks of the Silent Way, a route whispered about in hushed tones by shepherds who claimed that anyone who followed it vanished without a trace, their cries swallowed by the mountains. Some scholars argue it is merely a myth born from the region's harsh winters. Others suggest an ancient ritual corridor, perhaps a forgotten pilgrimage route used by a pre-Christian sect whose symbols are still etched in the stone walls deeper within. The drone's battery wanes as it reaches a dark fissure, a yawning mouth of earth that seems to pulse with an unseen energy. The footage cuts to static just as the aircraft hovers over the abyss, leaving viewers with a single, chilling question. Does the path lead to a hidden sanctuary, a buried city, or something far older, something that has been waiting, patient, for a new set of eyes to finally notice its existence? The answer remains locked in the shadows, beckoning the curious and the brave to step beyond the known and confront whatever lies at the end of that silent, winding trail. What if the stone circles of Göbekli Tepe were not the first whisper of human imagination, but merely the echo of an older, vanished culture? One that never cultivated wheat, never built villages, yet left behind a language of stone that still haunts the Anatolian plateau. Scholars have long marveled at the intricately carved pillars, the soaring T-shaped monoliths, the swirling foxes and vultures that seem to stare across millennia. Their age, over 11,000 years, pushes back the timeline of monumental architecture far beyond the advent of agriculture. But a growing body of evidence suggests that Girdle's celebrated site could be the final chapter of a pre-agricultural civilization, a people whose existence is recorded only in the stubborn shadows they cast upon the earth. The first clue lies in the distribution of similar megalithic sites scattered across the Fertile Crescent, from the basalt formations of Nevali Sauri to the enigmatic stone circles of the Levantine megalithic belt. Each of these structures shares a baffling commonality. They are positioned on high ridges, aligned with celestial events, and bear motifs that do not correspond to any known Neolithic symbolism. Radiocarbon dates from organic residues in the surrounding sediment layers repeatedly predate the accepted onset of farming in the region by several centuries, hinting at a sophisticated cultural network that operated before crops ever took root. A second, more provocative strand of the theory comes from recent paleo-environmental studies. Pollen analysis from Lake Kors near Göbekli Tepe reveals a sudden, widespread decline in wild grain species around 200 BP, coinciding with a rapid increase in charcoal deposits. Some researchers interpret this as evidence of large-scale landscape clearing, perhaps for ceremonial gatherings, by a mobile hunter-gatherer group possessing the organization and manpower to manipulate entire ecosystems. If true, It would imply a social complexity rivaling that of later agrarian societies, without the crutch of settled farming. The most unsettling hint, however, is the discovery of a set of ochre-stained slabs beneath the eastern terrace, each bearing a series of incised marks that defy any known script. When examined under infrared microscopy, the patterns reveal a repetitive sequence of glyph-like symbols, suggesting a proto-writing system. Some linguists propose that this could be the missing link between prehistoric pictographs and the later Sumerian cuneiform, a bridge built by a people whose language vanished along with their way of life. Skeptics argue that these anomalies are simply the result of later Neolithic reinterpretations, that the pre-agricultural dates are statistical outliers, and that the supposed glyphs are natural scratches. Yet the convergence of architectural, ecological, and epigraphic anomalies is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. If Göbekli Tepe is indeed the last monument of a civilization that thrived on the edge of the Ice Age, then the true legacy of those ancient architects may be hidden not in the stones themselves, but in the silence that follows them. A silence that still reverberates across the hills, asking us to wonder what other truths lie buried beneath the dust of forgotten ages. The trees have stood there for millennia, their trunks knotted like the fingers of an ancient god, their canopies forming a ceiling that swallows the sun and turns day into perpetual twilight. Travelers who have dared to step beyond the village's edge speak of a silence so profound it presses against the ears, a silence that seems to swallow even the wind. What lies hidden in that hush? What secrets have the forest guarded since the world was still young? Legends tell of a stone circle, half buried beneath a carpet of moss, arranged in a pattern that matches no known astronomical chart. Some scholars argue it predates even the first Bronze Age settlements in the region, suggesting a civilization that understood the stars long before recorded history began. When archaeologists finally uncovered a fragment of polished obsidian within the circle, they found markings unlike any known script, wavy lines that pulse when touched by sunlight, as if the stone itself remembers a language lost to time. Deeper still, the forest yields a series of natural formations that defy explanation. A river runs uphill for several meters before disappearing into a fissure that exhales a faint, metallic scent. Water collected from the river tastes of iron, yet chemical analysis shows no trace of minerals. Local folklore claims the water is the breath of a forgotten river spirit, a guardian that once guided caravans across the harsh steppe, but vanished when the world turned to iron and stone. Even the flora seems to resist classification. A grove of white bark trees bears bark that, when peeled, reveals a layer of living crystal, humming softly in the night. Biologists who have examined the phenomenon can only hypothesize that a rare symbiosis between fungus and mineral deposits is at work. Yet no comparable example exists anywhere else on the planet. And then there are the whispers, soft, indecipherable murmurs that echo through the trunks at dusk. Some claim they are the remnants of an ancient chant, a rite performed by a people whose names have been erased from every record. Others argue they are the natural resonance of the forest's own heartbeat, a pulse that aligns with the lunar cycle, hinting at an intelligence far beyond human comprehension. All these threads intertwine, forming a tapestry of mystery that refuses to be unraveled. The forest stands as a living archive, its pages written in stone, water, crystal, and sound. What secrets remain locked within its silent depths? Perhaps the answer is not a single revelation, but the understanding that some mysteries are meant to linger, waiting for a mind brave enough to listen to the forest's quiet song.